Good afternoon, everyone. It's my honor to introduce President Mark Schlissel from the University of Michigan. Mark?
Thanks, Don. You can tell I'm not the headliner because that's the shortest introduction I've received since I've been at the University of Michigan. But thanks very much. It's really a pleasure and an honor to introduce our keynote speaker today, Governor Rick Snyder. Governor Snyder grew up here in Battle Creek and came as a student to the University of Michigan, where he received his undergraduate degree in our General Studies program. And I think that's a fantastic advertisement for the power of broadly educating yourself, particularly for a governor who talks about STEM education, to also point out the value of a general education. Governor Snyder also got his MBA and his JD here at the University of Michigan, and he received remarkably a fourth degree, an honorary degree, when he was our graduation speaker back in 2011. He worked first for Coopers & Lybrand for almost a decade, eventually leading their merger and acquisitions group. He became the CEO of Gateway Computer, but then moved back here to the Ann Arbor area as an entrepreneur, began a venture capital firm or two, but really remarkably began a career as a public citizen. Serving on advisory boards here at the university and elsewhere around the state. He was the first chair of the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. He was one of the founders of Ann Arbor Spark, along with one of my predecessors, President Coleman, a very successful local economic development organization, and then ran and was successfully elected as Michigan's governor in 2010, and of course re-elected just last year in 2014 for a second term. Despite a tough economic climate, the governor has been a true champion of education at all levels, particularly higher education. He's a self-described tough nerd who has long recognized the importance of IT security. I'll always admire the governor for three things. The first is his first elected office was governor, so why not start at the top? The second is how he gets things done. He's persistent, doesn't matter what the climate is. He's going to work to achieve goals on behalf of the citizens of the state, and so I've learned from this. And then finally, I'll always be impressed with how he gets away with public events not wearing a necktie. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome Governor Rick Snyder.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be back on campus. I love being here, and thanks for that wonderful introduction, Market. And it's great to have you as president of the university. So many things about this topic we could talk about, and in many respects, I think I'm preaching to the choir. You wouldn't be here today if you didn't understand and appreciate the importance of cybersecurity, and many of you have lived through the challenges. One of the things I always like to start with, though, when I talk about cybersecurity is what got my own interest and why I think it's so important. Well, first of all, I am proud to say I am a nerd, and one subset of that is being a techie. Technology is something that's critically important, that's transforming our lives, and it's not going to go backward. It's only going to continue to advance in terms of the speed of connectivity, how we connect, the way we're all interconnected in this world. And I'm very much proud of that. And I've helped push the state of Michigan, the state government in particular, to be much more proactive and aggressive in terms of doing those things, in terms of moving that forward. And it's working. But if you stop for a second and say, okay, that's great. You're actually making us more connected. You're doing all these great things. You also have to do it in a responsible fashion. And that's where I emphasize cybersecurity. For everything we do to say we're advancing information technology to take that to the next level, I think it's equally important that there's also a corresponding effort to encourage better cybersecurity. Because we're creating potential risk and issues by doing more in information technology, we have to do it in a thoughtful, responsible fashion. And the challenges are there in cybersecurity. It's amazing that the state of Michigan alone, we've seen a huge escalation in the number of times we're attacked. One, I think there are more attacks, but secondly, we're getting better at recognizing we're attacked. Because I think in many cases we probably were being attacked and we didn't even know it. I bet that's still going on to some degree. You know what the number is in terms of daily attacks on the state of Michigan government right now? It's about 2.5 million a day, to put it in context for you. That's why this is important. What are the risks of having a cybersecurity breach? A lot of people don't take the time to actually analyze that. I view it as fairly straightforward. There are at least 3 critical areas that if you have a breach in cybersecurity, here's what you have at risk. First of all, confidential information. The whole area of confidentiality. There is critical information that should be kept private. Think about healthcare, all the issues of your medical records in your healthcare. The second one is the whole issue of integrity of data. How much of your financial information is out there in the world? How much of your personal background and information is with the state of Michigan or some record keeper like us? And what would happen if someone could go in and change that information? What impact would that have on your life? And then accessibility. Can you get that information when you need it? And if there's a cyber threat, if that information is not available, you may not be able to go buy dinner tonight or go do a transaction in some fashion. So if you think about it, those 3 critical areas are things we really need to be concerned with. And not only do I view that at personal, at a state of Michigan level, but it's a personal issue. I bet many of us here, how many people here have had some kind of breach that you're aware of your own information? Raise your hand. Most of the hands are up, folks. I remember I've had someone steal my identity at one point in time. They apparently got my credit card number. And I remember for several years, I had to go get my credit record every so often and learn about this apartment in Washington, D.C. I had that I never occupied, nor did I actually know about until I pulled my credit report. And that people were doing business until you get those notices that you were behind on some debt you owed that you never incurred because someone else had taken your credit card. One of the classics, and I'll share one more story with you, this was actually at home. I think I am a pretty good techie, so when I set up our house, I actually set up a separate computer for the kids. So we had a computer for my wife and I to be online, and I knew the kids were, this was back when they were elementary, middle school age. I knew they'd probably be going to websites and they'd click on things, again, that would get in trouble in some fashion. So I said, here's your computer. And I did all the normal firewall stuff. I'm pretty good. I'm not a real IT person, but I thought I did pretty good protection. Well, after a while, it started running really slow, this computer. So I called in my own help. I called in expertise from the community here to come help me figure this out. And even they couldn't figure it out first. So we kept going. We all knew something wasn't right. And finally, we found someone good enough to figure out. And you know what was going on? It had been hijacked. And that there was a Korean version of DOS actually running in the background on that computer. And it was doing processing for someone. Those are the kind of issues and risks we face today. So what do you do about it? You have to be proactive. And I'm proud to say, at the state of Michigan, I think we're a leader in this country in terms of helping do it in terms of the public sector. And there are at least 4 areas you need to focus on. First of all, we need leadership in this area. We need people standing up to talk about this. One of the things you'll find quite often, and I bet it's true of some of your organizations, is you're working hard on cybersecurity, but you don't want to really tell anyone. Because you figure if you tell someone, you might make yourself a bigger target. I appreciate that. That's not something to be ignored. But if we really have a problem in our country, we have to be open and honest to say, how do we work together to solve that problem? So we do need leadership. And I view the state of Michigan, we have a role to be that leader. We can be a clearinghouse, a coordinator, a place to rally people together to work on issues like this. The next one is the whole issue of prevention. How do you do prevention? I'm sure you've talked about that today. A lot of it is really simple stuff to get the average computer user just to do some simple things. Password, there's a novel idea. It was great. We did an employee suggestion program in the state of Michigan where we actually did this in kind of a gain sharing fashion. We opened it up to all of them to send in ideas, and then we had people vote on the ideas. We had 3 winning ideas. One of the winners was put the name of the place on Pure Michigan billboards to where that place actually is. There was a common sense one. But one of the other winners was a person wrote in, and I gave him courage for writing in saying, can I get 1 password? Because I've got about 15 passwords. So I just write them on a sheet of paper and put it on my terminal, my monitor. Oh my gosh. So these are the kind of things that we can work with people on. And so how do you do easy-to-use training that's actually kind of fun? And I'm proud to say we've got some things at the state we actually do that I enjoy doing. And we get them about every 6 weeks to 2 months where a lesson comes in. It's an interactive lesson, and I actually enjoy doing it, and I still learn stuff. So prevention is this huge issue in terms of working through that. Now, what do you do if you actually have a problem? Detection, define that problem. And I mentioned how we get attacked so many times at the state. We continuously need to update our detection tools. But we actually need to do a better job of coordinating when one of us is hit to say that is probably also going on with other people. So one of the things we're trying to do is really create a cyber command center kind of an environment so organizations can feel comfortable contacting the state in some fashion to say, hey, we're getting this kind of attack. So we can be on the lookout and let other places to know they'll be on the same lookout for the same kind of issue to help detect these kind of issues. And then finally, what do you do to deal with it once you've been attacked? How do you get restored? How do you get back up? And that's an area I think we're woefully inadequate, that we need a lot more work to be done. Because I don't think most organizations are really fully prepared to respond if they had a huge attack happen to them. Again, the smaller ones we can manage. But if we had a big one or we had one that affected sectors of our economy or something, we are not prepared for that, in my view. One of the things we're trying to do, just to start the seeds of this being planned, we created the Civilian Cyber Corps here in Michigan. And I encourage you to sign up for it, or people in your organization to sign up. So what we said is can we go out to the private sector, the public sector, find individuals that are willing to sign up to say they can work with their organization. And if we really had a broader attack, they would be available to come help someone else. Because no organization is going to have all the resources they need to respond to restoring themselves if it's a full-blown attack. And we're going to need to help one another. So we want to start this as a precursor organization. Long-term, I believe it'll actually literally become part of the National Guard. Not with weapons, traditional weapons, but with people that have cyber skills. I think that's the kind of attitude we need to approach this with. And so we're doing 10 regional teams. We're actually doing teams in automotive, financial, 2 or 3 other areas to say we have specialty teams that can go help companies or organizations that are being assaulted in some fashion when they've been hit. So this is the kind of framework we need to build on. And that's why I want to thank you for having this session today. This is the positive steps we need to take. Having an open dialogue. Talking about the issues each one of us has, because they're a lot more common than we probably acknowledge. Talking about how we can learn best practices in terms of education, in terms of prevention and detection. And then let's talk about how we can respond together to understand that we're in this together. So I want to thank you for having this session. I hope my information's been helpful to you. This is the kind of effort that I can tell you, in terms of a national security issue, I view this as one of the greatest national security threats we have in terms of true risk to our country. The information technology age is absolutely incredible. I'm so excited to be part of it. Many of us have grown up with it. I was joking earlier, I remember doing punch cards here and learning COBOL. We've come a long way from those days. Now we live with our electronics. But as we live with these electronics, let's show the rest of our citizens that we can help keep them safe from having major issues because of these wonderful devices that we have. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you, Governor. So we've got a few questions we'd like to ask you, if that's all right. So part of your cybersecurity strategy is to develop cybersecurity industry in Michigan. What kind of steps are we taking along those lines, and what's our competitive advantage with other regions?
Sure. I think we have, first of all, a lot of advantages, and then I think we're actually doing a great job of working together. In terms of advantages, we're sitting at one of the greatest advantages in the world, the University of Michigan.
That's right.
And for a guy that had to wear a green tie yesterday, I'm recovering, so I'm glad I got some applause for that one. To put it in context, though, we have some other wonderful universities that are doing great work, and the reason I say that is one of the greatest assets is the Merit Network. And that's something we should be so proud of that was built here and exists here. Beyond that, though, we're doing a good job of rallying people together, bringing things together in terms of the state partnering with these wonderful institutions with the private sector. The biggest issue I have with the federal government quite often is they've spent most of their time, in my perception, hardening themselves. And they do need to do that, but I think they've overlooked the fact that the greatest risk and threats to cybersecurity are not within the federal government, it's within all these industry sectors and the rest of our lives. And so in Michigan, my view at the state level is we've tried to embrace a broader network. Let's make it a bigger tent and bring everyone together. And we're doing that. And a couple unique things. I meant the civilian cyber corps is a unique asset in the country that we're starting here, and we should be proud. And Don, you've been a big help in that. The cyber range, again, you know all about it, but the cyber range is a unique asset that we have working with the Merit Network, the universities, the Michigan National Guard, where we actually have Alphaville, where we can do blue-red competitions, find the flag, all these exercises, and it's being 20 sometimes a year or more, it's being utilized as a great asset and resource to people, to train people to be better with cybersecurity. So in many respects, I'm proud of that, and let's keep it going. And the other one is this thought leadership. So you're having this conference, we're doing a cyber event Sunday and Monday of this next week. Let's be louder and prouder about how we're a leader. We have to recognize that may make us a bigger target, but isn't it more important that we try to help all our citizens?
Thank you. Richard Clark said that a digital Pearl Harbor is unlikely, but that the U.S. is suffering a death by 1,000 cuts through the loss of intellectual property. How does this impact companies in Michigan and our competitiveness?
It does. It's one of those great challenges that every time we lose intellectual property in particular, it's a loss of a competitive opportunity, and it could lead to job loss. So we do need to be sensitive to that. But in some contexts, I don't overlook the digital Pearl Harbor. I don't think people should dismiss that. I really am concerned that there could be a catastrophic attack in some fashion. And to be open with you, I wouldn't be surprised that a lot of the ways we would be attacked have already been planted. And so we do cyber exercises at the state of Michigan, again, with the cyber range and all these other great partners with us, and we do them well. But I have not seen a simulated attack yet that truly reflects what, if we sat down, we could design and the amount of havoc it could reach. So we need to be even more honest with ourselves. And we need to do a better job of that. And so I'm not trying to scare people, but I do want you to have, if you're not scared to some degree, I don't think you really understand the threat we face. So that's something I want to continue working on, and I'm going to push people to actually, let's keep working IP, let's work confidentiality, integrity, availability issues, but let's not overlook the fact that there could be much more catastrophic consequences.
So the Internet of Things is coming, and Gartner thinks that by 2020 there'll be about 25 billion devices on the network. And that includes things like refrigerators and so forth, but also cars, aircraft, and so forth. So how can Michigan help make this a safer world for us as we come into this Internet of Things?
Well, the great part is Michigan's the best place for making things in the world. Made in Michigan is something special. We're still an industrial powerhouse that very few places in the world can match. And when I say that, it's not just the physical manufacturing, the industrial design. Michigan has, I think, more industrial designers than virtually any other place in the country, and we're getting those people together. So part of this is designing in better thoughtfulness and intelligence on cyber issues. I know we got a lot of people here that do your homework and research. You know the best way that someone might hack into someone's homes nowadays could be through their refrigerator or through their thermostat, depending on how they were set up. I mean, companies have been hacked most successfully through their pop machines. So this is where, as we expand this broad reach, we need to be more thoughtful that all these devices create a cybersecurity threat. The classic you've seen on the news about hacking cars, about someone taking control of a vehicle. That one actually amazed me because I viewed that as something common sense that, to be blunt, the auto industry should have been further ahead on a while ago. And we need to be proactive on that, especially as we do wonderful things. This is, again, we're doing M-City, we're doing intelligent vehicles. We're the leader in the world in helping do that. We're in competition with a couple other places, but we're helping lead the world in intelligent vehicles. Let's help lead the world in intelligent vehicle cybersecurity.
Yes. Thank you. So recently there's been a lot of news stories about cyber espionage from foreign governments. And President Obama and President Xi signed an agreement last week to stop cyber espionage between the countries. In your opinion, how will this, or will it have much effect on what's going on in terms of loss of intellectual property and the amount of cyber espionage that's going on with foreign governments?
Well, I don't think we should underestimate that. I think it's good an agreement was done. I think that is a very constructive step. But that's just a starting point. I think we need to work under an assumption that that's happening, and again, without identifying any single country, but there are multiple countries out there or groups within countries that are undertaking either terrorist activities or essentially offensive activities in some fashion on the cyber front. So we need to assume that, and we need to be diligent and work hard to deal with that. One illustration, because you mentioned China in particular, I make regular trips to China, and I want to do more business with China. I have great relationships with a lot of Chinese government officials and business people, and in a very positive way. But it was interesting. I was talking to one Chinese company recently that is in a world where intellectual property is absolutely critical. So one of the questions I ask in particular is, well, how do you feel about protection of your intellectual property here? Yeah. And so what you find is the Chinese economy, as it evolves, you're going to find a lot of Chinese companies becoming critically concerned with intellectual property. And I think that's one of the things that will help transition the commercial world, but we still have this national issue we need to deal with.
Okay. Thank you. Scott McNeely made a statement about being zero consumer privacy available now. How applicable is that to government and education in terms of the fact that Google collects so much information, and Apple and whoever? What should government be collecting? What should public institutions like universities? And what's your opinion on the right balance there?
Yeah, we do need to strike a balance because, again, I mentioned confidentiality. That is an important issue, and we need to acknowledge that. But I'll talk quickly a little bit about what we're doing in Michigan, because I have a vision for the IT future of the state of Michigan government. And I call it my page, MI page. You can see I try to use the my whenever I can. Is if you think about today, when you interface with the state of Michigan, we have 20 departments, a bunch of agencies. Literally, depending on your life, you could be in 20 to 30 or 40 different databases. Because, again, you file your tax return with Treasury, you have all these different activities. It's all over the place. So it's a hassle for you in your life. And so the vision I'm driving them towards is to say, instead of having 20 databases that have you in multiple times, we have 10 million citizens and a number of organizations in our state. Why don't we go the other way and go customer-centric and say we have 10 million customer records? And that at some point in life, you should be able to self-manage your own file. And again, we put restrictions on confidentiality within state government, so someone in the state can't see everything. But wouldn't it be cool if you could just go change your address once? So my vision is to move to my page to make you the center of the database and make us adjust to that. I think that's the way we should be heading in terms of much better responsiveness to you. And my goal longer term is to say, why don't we do that with the public sector? So again, if you're in Ann Arbor versus the state of Michigan versus the federal government, this is all stuff that's nuisance in your life. How do we make that go away to give you better customer service because we work for you?
All right. Thank you, sir. So given that you've accomplished an awful lot that was in your original Michigan Cyber Initiative, in your second term now, what are the priorities that are remaining that you want to accomplish?
Well, continuing this path, because I don't think this will ever stop, and it shouldn't. This is continuous improvement. Again, you set the framework and then you just get better and better, because every time you put in an improvement in to do better cybersecurity, there's someone out there figuring out how to beat that. So you can never take it for granted. The other part is I want us to be a bigger thought leader and embrace more organizations, private sector organizations, other public sector members, on how we can do this and be that clearinghouse coordinating member. And again, as I said, the area I think we're least prepared for is restoration or response in some ways. And there's a lot more work that needs to be done there. And I am very concerned that a lot of people simply aren't even doing passwords. So there's a huge amount of work to be done. And I'm fired up to keep working this.
Great. Thanks, sir. So, so we know there's this very large threat out there, and of course we have a lot of resources here at the university in terms of, of course, all the brain power and the things that we do, and we're a very large enterprise. So what are the things, other than the faculty research and that are part of inherently what we do, should we be doing to help with this here at the University of Michigan to help with this problem?
Well, there's a lot, because again, the University of Michigan is clearly one of the world's thought leaders. But then you say, to the degree there are literally tens of thousands of students here, do we actually believe our students are fully aware and understand cyber threats and cybersecurity? My answer to that would be no, just by the law of numbers.
Yeah.
How can we make sure that as these young people get a fabulous education, that they're prepared to go out in the world and be advocates, be those evangelists for cybersecurity? And how do we really make that transition? Also, how do we really get out to the general public? Because again, the university has a broader role in terms of helping the public good. And then the other part is, I'll come back to the civilian cyber core thing a little bit. This is where we need to work together, because you mentioned, and you're right, Don, we got some of the best, brightest minds in the world here. That's not the same thing to say the alarm goes off, there's a massive cyber assault, the grid goes down, hospital records go down, and how do you respond within a matter of hours to get people in place to help solve that problem? You can have the most brilliant minds in the world, but if they've not met one another, they've not talked, they don't know what each one's roles and responsibilities is in a very concise fashion. I mean, not to pick on the university, but usually what you'd find if you said you want to do this, it's like, let's form a committee and let's talk about it for 2 years, right?
Only 2?
And to be open with you, my point is, I'm not trying to sound alarmist, my point is why shouldn't we have that committee meeting now and address all those roles and responsibility, even though we may never have to actually do that work, but get it so everyone knows what their place is and role is if that alarm goes off. That's why I'd ask the university to work on too.
Thank you. Social media is a very interesting thing that has developed, and there's a lot of great things that come out of it, some not so great things. But certainly one of the things that has been used more to coordinate attacks. Is the state of Michigan doing anything to try and help monitor and be aware of potential attacks by looking at social media?
Yeah, and I want to be careful. This is not I don't want people to believe, you know, the black helicopters are coming in and all this kind of stuff. This is for publicly available information. It's all out there on the web. We do spend some time and resource looking through that, and we're doing that through the normal course of things with the state police, among others. And I think that's important because it's not just cyber threats. If you look at child pornography, human trafficking, drugs, other violent acts, looking for people that are potentially in the position to do the school shootings. There are a lot of scary things out there. And again, not to scare people, but I think it's important that we're not just reactive, but people are doing it in a thoughtful, again, following all the civil liberty rules out there, but to say that we're at least aware of what's sort of going on in the world out there, and that if we find something pops up on the screen, that there's set protocols and procedures to follow up on that. And we have found that to actually help protect the public. And I think that is a reasonable role.
So you personally have been a leader amongst other governors in calling their attention to this issue, and I know when you first were elected and started to get involved, a lot of governors had not even thought about it. What kind of progress have other states made?
We are making some progress in a number of places, but there's a lot more to be done. There's still, to be blunt, there are senior government officials, whether they're state or national, that are still ignoring this issue too much, in my view. And it's much like the adoption curve of technology. You have early adopters, you have fast followers, you have most people in the middle, and you have the laggards. It's as true in cybersecurity as anything else with technology adoption. And so one thing I've set aside, because again, I spend most of my time on Michigan issues, but on the national stage with the National Governors Association and other groups, is cyber is something that I have become active in. And to be open, we've created situations to hopefully get the attention of enough other governors that they're doing things, and some have done a great job of responding. Others probably need a little more motivation.
Yeah.
But that's relentless positive action. That's a little more relentless there. I'm going to stay on top of that one.
Okay, sir. We've got just a couple minutes left. Is there any parting comments that you'd like to make to our audience?
Well, this is great. Again, as I mentioned, I think it's wonderful you're here. This is a topic that you can stay in your own little silo very easily, whether it be a company, whether it be a department, whether it can be the university, whether it's the state government. If you're in the cyber field or you're doing cybersecurity, I bet you're already somewhat overworked already, to be blunt, because the demands are so much. But the only way we're really going to be prepared is by talking to one another and creating venues and forums to have that dialogue. And so what I'd encourage you to do is, this is a great event. I hope you do this on a regular basis. But I'd also, again, encourage you to come do homework on joining a cyber range event, participating in one of those exercises, encouraging people to look at potentially getting involved with the Civilian Cyber Corps, talking to your friends and neighbors. It's amazing. I still have that discussion in my family every so often, probably more with my wife than the kids, about passwords and things like that. It all makes a difference. And just think about the difference you can make in someone's life, even if it is helping one single individual understand it's time to change your password and it's time to use something other than your birthday for your password. These all make a difference. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. So when I first started working with you and your team back in 2010, I felt very fortunate to have a governor who understood cybersecurity issues better than any other non-technical leader that I'd ever worked with. And I feel very fortunate again that you've taken the time to come and talk with us, to emphasize how important this is and give us your insights. So thank you so much for coming, sir. Really appreciate it.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, really appreciate it.